From being turned away at an emergency room to finding hope in a treatment center, we discuss the challenges and triumphs of navigating a complex mental health and addiction journey. Welcome to Normalize the Conversation. I'm your host, Francesca Regeter, and today I'm joined by author, advocate, and host of the Bunny Hugs and Mental Health podcast, Todd Rennebohm. Join us as we delve into the intertwining struggles of addiction and mental health, exploring Todd's journey from suicidal ideation to advocacy, culminating in a newfound understanding through an ADHD diagnosis. Todd, thank you so much for joining me today. I am very excited about our conversation, but before we begin, I want to check in. How are you really?
I've had a better day. Let's put it that way. Last night I visited a friend in the hospital, a loved one, and they tried to take their life yesterday. They're a young person, so it's even harder to. It just makes it that much harder, I think, for some reason. So yeah, it's my heart is heavy, but I'm also hopeful and glad that they are in the hospital and finding help and they're physically okay. And so yeah, but yeah, it's very complicated and confusing and upsetting and hopeful at the same time.
Yeah, I'm so sorry that you and your loved ones are going through this, but I'm so glad that your loved one is in the hospital getting that support, that intervention, because when it's the right support and the right intervention, it is so critical at that time to have someone there, to have a support system there that really helped get you started in the right track.
Yes, I agree. Whether or not that'll happen, I'm not sure, because that's kind of why I started advocating, was because of the services in my province. And it sounds like pretty much everywhere is struggling with trying to keep up with services in mental health. So hopefully that's the case. So yeah, I'm hopeful. I'm especially hopeful because I know they have a really great support system. Maybe not, um, maybe not the system itself, like the mental health system, but their support system is strong. So yeah.
That's so important. In this mental health system, it blows my mind how a system that's genuinely meant to support you in your darkest times and your worst days often can make that worse, depending on what facility you're in and how much funding they have. I don't want to say that every situation is bad, but many, many situations can be very traumatizing, and we don't see a push for a standardized treatment or standardized like system of care. Quality of care is maybe the word I'm looking for.
Mm.
I recently attended like a subcommittee meeting for my state, and they're looking to improve our involuntary hold law. And one thing they said is they want to increase the capacity of beds in the psych wards, which in theory sounds great. But I was like, where's that funding coming from? Because we don't have enough funding to even support the patients who are currently there. You want to increase the number of patients? Are you going to increase the funding and have more people on staff, more resources for them? Are we going to fix up the facilities so they don't look like these dark, scary places that look like they're falling apart on the inside? What actual support are we offering other than let's overcrowd these places, which is why those bed caps are in place? Not opposed to having more beds. I'm opposed to having more underfunded beds.
Yeah, exactly. Well put. Yeah.
The system
Um,
needs to be repaired.
yeah, and the same goes with addiction in my province, and well, probably in my entire country of Canada. Yeah, they're always throwing more money at treatment beds, but then they're not throwing money at even training people to work at the facilities. So you're understaffed. You have all these beds, but you're understaffed. So or
Yeah.
you're trying to hire people from like internationally and stuff, because like why not put the money into schooling people so that they can staff these beds that you're planning on putting in. Yeah, it's all very it's all very backwards.
It is, and just so many people have these horror stories of reaching out for help for the first time and just having the worst experience. I know with me, the night that I got hospitalized following a suicide attempt, I was in a glass room in a facility, like before I was brought up to the actual psych ward, and it was like a row of chairs. It was me and an older gentleman who was having some kind of episode where he was screaming the whole time, and I was this like timid 20-year-old female, and that was terrifying for me. I was stuck in this glass room, no idea what was happening, really upset that I was alive and that I felt like I had failed at the suicide attempt. And that was my initial experience. And I think it's so common that people have that traumatizing experience if only that support was valuing the human being as a human being and not just we're legally required to keep you safe for X amount of hours.
Exactly. Yeah. Sorry, my voice is all. Yeah, 100%. I had a similar experience. In my darkest, one of my darkest times, I somehow got to the hospital before a suicide attempt, and I went to the ER asking for help, and I was basically turned away. They said, "Well, unless you've attempted, we're not even going to consider bringing you in the hospital," which blew my mind because I thought, well, what if I'm successful? So
Yeah.
then what? Then you're just calling the morgue. You're not, you're not helping me at all. And they still didn't help me. And I mean, I was in my mid 30s, small town prairie boy from Canada, and it took. It was just embarrassing to even go to the hospital. Like I didn't understand mental health very well then, and so I really went out of my comfort zone to even ask for help, and then to be basically poo-pooed and told to go home was probably the most dangerous thing that ever happened because it was a year later that I ended up back in that ER, but handcuffed to a gurney and strapped to a gurney with police on either side of me with with an ambulance because I had attempted again because I didn't change at all. I didn't get any help, so I just thought, I was embarrassed that I even went. So I just kind of continued on with where I was going down that road of addictions and suicidality and all the stuff. And yeah, it's but yet you go to on social media and or even media and like mental health is really a big talking point right now, and it's a hot button issue, and everybody's talking about it. But yet the system is like so slowly moving, while the rest of the society is moving on with it, and even stigmas are changing. But yet the system is still 20 years behind.
I am so sorry the system failed you. I mean, that's just a perfect example of someone reaching out for help, needing support, and no one listening. And when we're not
Hmm.
listening to people who are asking for help and we're like, it's not serious enough, this is the problem with mental health and the mental health system, right? Is that we wait till someone has the pills in their hand or the gun in their hand or whatever it is before we're like, oh my goodness, they're not making it up. And we just assume that people are looking for attention or they're making it up or they're being dramatic and they just need to go home and sleep it off. And if we're
Hmm.
waiting till that last minute, till someone's standing on the edge to be like, oh my goodness, now we want to help you, it's almost at that point where it's too late. We need to be helping people when they're first saying, I need some support, instead of when they are barely hanging on, offering the little bit of support of let's keep you safe and then throw you back into the world once our legal requirement is complete.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and yeah. And and the thing is, so maybe I didn't need hospitalization at that point, but they offered me nothing. There was no, it was either you're in the hospital or you're not. There's no, is there outpatient programs or is there more supports or anything? It was just go home. And then a year later, when I did get there, like you said, it was just, I thought I was going to get help. I'm okay. Now I'm in the psych ward. And it was basically just a holding pen for me, somewhere safe where I couldn't hurt myself for like 2 weeks. And then, yeah, thrown back home again. And at least after that, I had regular psychiatrist appointments, whereas before I was on a 1 year waiting list to talk to a psychiatrist. But so that's about the only thing that came out of it. Um, and yeah, like you said, it's like, so if someone has heart issues and it's like their valves are clogging and stuff, and they're asking for help because they're scared of a heart attack, you don't say, yeah, your heart's clogged, but come back once you have the heart attack.
Yeah,
Then we'll help you. It's like, well, we could prevent the heart attack though if you help me now.
exactly.
That makes no sense.
It's not treated with the same urgency and respect as physical health. And the fact that you went in asking for help, they sent you home with zero resources shows the lack of urgency. and the lack of respect that we often have for individuals who are vulnerable, who are struggling, who need to be heard. And it makes me so angry because these resources are supposed to exist to help us. When you go to the
Mhm.
hospital, maybe you don't need an involuntary hold, but voluntary should be an option. It is an option in many places, yet they don't tell you that. Outpatient services are common. They often don't tell you where to go to get them. Or these things are available, but there's not enough funding. There's not enough supply, too high of a demand, because we're waiting till last minute when everyone needs support instead of helping them along the way. So it just makes me so angry to see how we're finally talking about mental health. We're encouraging people to reach out for help as they should reach out for help because they deserve support. But to know that in so many cases, the system is still way behind where it needs to be, and it's failing so many people every single day.
It is, yeah. And I think, I mean, I think things take a while to change. So I think younger people are talking about it now, which is great. So that's a start. Like it does take, it's an investment. So hopefully, in 20 years, the people, kids now are in the system and they're the ones changing the system and changing it. But it's true. It's like this next generation. It's like this weird generation gap where like nothing's happening, which is really unfortunate.
It is. And you mentioned that your loved one is a young person. So I'm going to make the assumption that your loved one is 25 or under. And would that be correct?
Yes. Yeah.
So when it comes to the younger generation, I think it's so important that we look at mental health education and support within our education system, right? Are we offering the tools that they need? Because we have so many years of research to back up that suicide is the second leading cause of death of individuals between the ages of 10 and 25. That is a fact that research has proven for years. So we know that this is happening, and yet there tends to not be a lot of support at a young age when we could be offering it.
I am positive that they had that younger people do have better supports than I had when I was their age. That
That is true.
this is you know 30 years ago, but which is weird because it feels I don't are the numbers going up? Like
It
it seems like the numbers are going up, and we're talking about it more, which it feels like it should be.
going down,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I wonder, I feel like there's so many factors that could be contributing that. One, it's more openly talked about. So when we're seeing these suicide attempts happen, completed suicides, it's more talked about instead of,
Mm,
oh, something happened. So I think it's
right.
more prevalent in the fact that we're talking about it, as well as there's a lot of factors now contributing to it with, I always like to explain it with my loved ones that when they went to school and they were bullied from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. and then they went home. And
Hmm.
then summer they were off, weekends they were off. Kids now, they're bullied from the minute they wake up to the minute they go to bed, online, in person, everywhere. Then they have these standards of beauty of this is what I should look like, this is how I should behave. Why am I not developing as fast as someone else? Why am I not as good as someone else? This constant comparison with being online. So I think we're seeing a lot of pressures that were there, but not to the same con- constant degree. Like the frequency of
Hmm.
it was you could remove from it, you can't anymore. And I think to me, that's what I would say is the big impact on it.
Hmm. And even with my own kids, I have 19 and 17-year-old boys. I know COVID really affected them as well. It really affected their social skills and stuff because my 19-year-old, his grade 10, 11, 12 years of high school was during COVID. And, it was like either he wasn't at school because it was shut down, or they had to wear masks, or they couldn't be in groups of more than like two people at a time. So that really affected, I know that affected his mental health a lot too. So, um, yeah, I don't want to downplay COVID either as a factor.
Yeah, that's a huge factor. I know my younger brother was, I think, 11th grade and 12th grade during COVID. And it was like, it's so hard because a lot of opinions are forming at this age. And a lot of conversations are changing, but you can't see people's facial reactions. You can't
Hmm.
tell. People think being mean is funny, but you can't tell if they're smiling or not when they're making that like sarcastic comment or that rude comment. So now, because of what we think a sense of humor is it a sense of humor and they're being funny and this is supposed to be a joke and this is not supposed to be an attack against me? Or is this genuinely what they think of me? What is wrong with me? And he was like, that was a really hard part is without being able to see someone's facial expressions, it's like hiding behind a screen and sending a text message. You can't see the tone as well.
Hmm. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I was going to make a point and I forgot. I was diagnosed with ADHD a year ago, and it's explained my entire life up to this point. So I apologize. Plus, there's a lot on my mind right now.
You're good. And I think that's something that's so common, right? Especially with ADHD, is your mind is everywhere. And it's sometimes hard to stay on track. I know my brother, he was diagnosed with ADHD, and his biggest thing, and going into continuing with the conversation on school, is it's so hard for him to sit in a 3 hour lecture. He's like, my brain's not, even if you don't have ADHD, sitting in a 3 hour lecture is not easy. But when your brain is not able to sit down and focus for 3 hours straight while there's no engagement, no interaction, just being lectured at, that's something that's so hard for him. He's like, I started to pay attention. I tried to pay attention. I don't know why my brain is somewhere else. And it's like the system. It's just another example of a system not working for people who have a mental health condition.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, my diagnosis, like I said, it explained my whole life, and it's been so validating and justifying, sure. Because I've had so much trouble with anxiety and depression and addiction, and um a lot of internalizing and self criticizing and stuff, because I do, growing up, I would compare myself to other people. It's like, why can't I keep a job? Why can't I stay focused? Why can't I be successful? Why can't I do this? Why can't I do that? And it's because, yeah, my mind, it's just how my brain works. But yet, that's not, society isn't set up for people with ADHD to be successful. So I have to try twice as hard, and I have to be twice as self-aware and work at myself to be able to just function like a neurotypical person. And I'm not looking for sympathy or anything. That's just matter of fact. Just like
Absolutely.
someone with diabetes has to work twice as hard at being healthy, because they have to watch their diet and watch their food, and they can't just eat whatever. So um, it's the same thing, but just my brain. I always try to compare anything mental with something physical, because a lot of people don't understand. So, but they understand the physical thing because you can actually feel it. Uh, but anyway, yeah. So yeah. So it's been validating. It's been good. It's been um I've started meds now. When I do see a counselor, it's through the lens of ADHD, so it's not one size fits all kind of talk therapy. So that's been really exciting and good. But I have noticed it's almost like I was accepted more when people just thought I had depression and anxiety and addictions. Susan, now that I tell people I have ADHD, it's like, do you really? Well, everybody has ADHD, or they roll their eyes. It's, I don't even believe in ADHD. Like, I've had people straight up tell me they don't even believe in ADHD. I'm like, fine, then I just have anxiety and depression. And then they're like, oh, well, that's too bad. You should get some support. You believe in anxiety and depression and addiction, but you don't believe they could be a symptom of something bigger. It's so that part's been frustrating, but at the same time, it's been good because I don't care about them.
The stigma with ADHD is so huge. And I think a lot of that goes into this kind of like when people throw around the term OCD, right? They're like, oh, I'm so OCD. I like things
Yes.
organized. They do
Yeah.
that with ADHD. I can't sit still in class. I have ADHD. And it's like, can you not sit still because your brain is not allowing you and you have hyperactivity and difficulty with attention that is preventing you from sitting still and listening in class? Or are you super bored because your teacher's lecturing for 3 hours in math class? There's a difference.
Yeah.
So being able to understand that we can't just generalize something to this is what it is and make it like it's a joke and lighthearted, because so many people are struggling and now we use that as an excuse to call people lazy or they just don't care, they don't want to. That was the big thing for my brother. People always telling him he's lazy. He's like, I don't understand. I try. I used to bring him during his high school spring break in the few early years to my college to go to my classes with me. And he would sit there and he would take notes and then take the pop quiz at the end. And he would get so frustrated. He's like, I tried to pay attention. I tried to write notes. It's on exactly what we listened to today. And Todd, he's like, why didn't my brain just stay focused? And that was something that I don't think I even realized growing up with him, from me to him, the difference in my brain can sit there, focus, listen, take the notes, not get distracted, take in every single piece of information. Whereas his brain was able to take in some of the information, but then it would spark conversations and different thoughts within his brain. So the teacher would mention something about a business, and the teacher would say the business name, and now his brain has gone to thinking about that business and then gone to thinking about their product and how he uses that product, and he's made this full loop before getting regaining focus. And
Hmm.
that was the difference between me and him. And I never realized it until he sat down in a classroom next to me and we compared the way we were just taking notes in a class. And I think that's something people don't realize is it's not I'm being lazy, it's not I don't care, it's not that I don't want to. It's that one smart small detail got his brain so excited that he went on to another detail and then another detail and he couldn't just not that he didn't want to focus. He was just so excited in his brain and that was really great for him.
Again, well put. That's yeah, that's pretty much what it's like. Yeah. Yeah. But yet when it's something like it's when it's something that I have to focus on that I'm not that interested in, it is a freaking nightmare. It doesn't matter how hard I try. Like government paperwork, like you may as well just inject me with a panic attack. That's what's going to happen. It's like, talk about freaking out. But then, if it's something I'm interested in, then I hyper focus. And then it's
Yeah.
like some of the smartest people I know or the most informed people I know about certain subjects are neurodivergent people because it's all or nothing. My son was just recently diagnosed and during COVID, he basically taught himself German.
Wow.
But then he dropped it like as quickly as he picked it up, he just dropped it and went on to another thing. It either was not challenging anymore or it got to the point where it was too challenging and then he wasn't interested anymore and he dropped it and did something else and was like head first into that. So, but yeah, but that's unfortunately that's not how society runs. You know?
Yes. Society is made for people who honestly that they've deemed is what perfect standard behavior is. And anyone
Yeah.
who deviates from that a tiny bit, the system is not set up for in any way, shape, or form. And that's really unfortunate because I don't know anyone who is that exact standard of what a human's supposed to be according to the system. Like, do you know
Yeah.
anyone who's like perfect?
Uh I probably do. I can't think of any right now, but yeah,
I feel like I guess I could think of one person.
it's like I went to high school, then I went to college, then I got my job, and then I had a family, I bought a house, and then I died. It's like that's the like what? That sounds terrible. But some
Yeah.
people are just content with that, and more power to them. But that's just unfortunately the society is kind of set up for that. Well, I mean,
It
not unfortunate for them, but unfortunate for people that don't work in that system.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think that it's set up that way that people feel like they have to fall into that. And when they don't, it
Hmm.
can feel even more like a failure. I know for me, I'm 25, and if you compare me with other 25-year-olds, some of us are still in school and in grad school, but a lot of them have jobs, they're getting married, having kids, bought a house. I'm like, I'm going into debt trying to get a job that won't pay me enough to pay off that debt. And then there's people who are doing like this traditional step, and that's amazing for them. But it also makes me feel like a failure when I look like, why am I not falling into, why doesn't that appeal to me? Why don't I want that specific look for myself right now? Does that make sense?
Hmm. Absolutely, yeah. And the other thing is maybe these people aren't happy. Maybe they
Yeah.
maybe they just feel like that's the norm and that's how they, you know, that's how what they just have to do to survive. And but 15 years from now, they'll be in addiction treatment center and being like, oh my God, this, I was not I made all the wrong decisions because this is what I thought I had to do.
Yeah.
That's kind of what happened to me, I guess. It took me 45 years to get a ADHD diagnosis, um, but yeah, I'm I'm better now for it. It yeah, I was really emotional when I got diagnosed. Like I started crying and I was like, it just felt like someone grabbed me and was like, "You're not failure. You're not stupid. You're not lazy." It was just like, oh, it was really, really emotional. It was yeah, it was a good day.
I was going to ask you about that because for it to take 45 years to finally get a diagnosis that really makes it make sense. It really just validates everything you've experienced and gone through. I'm curious, when you got that diagnosis, were you kind of looking for diagnosis? Did you have any idea that maybe ADHD could be something you were struggling with? Or was that like you were sitting in therapy, your therapist told you, and it was like, wow, how did that play out?
Oh, it was a long process. So, yeah, I've had, well, it kind of started with anxiety. Grade 5, I was diagnosed with a stomach ulcer because I had such bad anxiety in grade 5, which is like, that's to me, that's bananas. I've never heard of a kid that young being diagnosed with like a disease that 7-year-old CEOs with high stressful jobs get, I was like, but even then, I wasn't like, they treated the physical part of it. They didn't treat like, okay, why is this kid worry so much? Why does he have so much anxiety? And then come high school, I started to drink, and that kind of numbed it a little bit. But I, because of the ADHD, I didn't feel like I fit in, even with my best friend groups and stuff. And then that turned into anger, turned into depression and anxiety into my 20s and 30s, bouncing around from job to job, doing things that I found, things that are outside my moral code, I'd say, because I needed those dopamine hits. It was like I was yeah, I was a bad father, I was a bad husband, I was a bad employee, like, but I needed that instant gratification to get me through the day. But ultimately, it was a bad. Those were very bad investments when it comes to emotions because shit came to a you know things came up to a head when it came to my like suicide attempt and stuff. So anyway, so then I ended up going to addiction treatment at some point, and that was amazing. I mean, it was the scariest part of my life, one of the scariest moments of my life. But it was amazing. I spent a month there, and it was like boot camp for life skills. Really, I saw say this all the time that I think everybody should go through a place like that, whether you have an addiction or not, just because it's a long, hard look at yourself, and you learn such important life skills. You learn so much about yourself that you didn't even know. But yeah, sorry, I got to catch my breath.
You're good. I'm
Sometimes I
on.
forget to breathe when I get in a roll.
That's a perfect place for me to interrupt you to ask
Oh,
you what
okay.
were some of like
I never
what
did
was
finish the question about the ADHD though, but I will. We'll work up to
we'll
it.
circle back. But what is the most important thing you learned? I think a lot of people just don't know
Oh,
like what I learned. So what is that most important thing that you learned?
in addiction treatment?
Yes.
Oh boy, most important thing I learned. Oh man.
Or one of the most important. It's like I just keep putting you on the spot with these questions.
No, no, it's good. I learned, well, one thing I learned about myself was that I'm pretty resilient. There was points where, like, I live in a really small town, and that's where my addiction treatment center is. So, which is not common at all. I mean, I live like 3 blocks from where I went for treatment.
Mhm.
Meanwhile, everyone else there is like from all over the province and the country. So, um, just that alone was kind of stressful that I'm going to treatment, and it's like my friends' parents and stuff like work there. So that was kind of weird, but because of my anxiety, there was times where it was like I just wanted to go home. I was so scared. I was just like so overwhelmed. I had such anxiety, but I didn't. I persevered and I went through it. It was like, holy shit. Okay, I think I could do a lot of things in my life if I can get through here. If I can go through this, then I can, yeah, I can go through a lot, which was surprising. So I learned that. I also learned that addictions and mental health are well, I kind of hate that we separate them because it's all, I mean, it's all encompassing. When I say mental health, I mean I'm talking addictions too whenever I talk mental health. uh, because everybody in there had either a suicide attempt or they had some kind of comorbidity, whether it was ADHD or trauma or PTSD, whatever. So I think addiction is a symptom of some bigger mental health issue. So that kind of bothers me. So I learned that. Also learned that I can't learn how to drink for myself. There was no slowing down. It's like, yeah, it's basically I'm allergic to drinking. There's no, it's never going away, and I have to constantly maintain it. Um, and well, marijuana use was probably even bigger than my addiction to alcohol, but yeah, it's a very slippery slope. So I, I, I have to just not do it ever again. Otherwise, I will very quickly be in treatment again. Uh, yeah, so those were kind of some of the bigger ones. Also, that I also learned empathy. Um, I mean, I was already pretty an empathetic person, but like hearing other people's stories that were like, because you're associating with people that you would never associate with anywhere else in society. So there's like dudes coming out of jail, gang members with like tattoos on their faces and stuff, and you're hugging and crying each other in group sessions because you just heard how that guy witnessed his dad take his own life and stuff like this, right? So it's like, um, everybody's got a story and everybody's just trying to get through life and to not judge and just have empathy for everybody. So yeah, those are probably some of my biggest lessons. So um,
Those are really great lessons to learn. I love what you said. First of all, the allergy to alcohol. I heard the first time I heard someone explain it like that was Lucy Hale. She did it on a podcast. I can't remember which one for the life of me. But that was so interesting to me because there's this misconception I think that people have that someone has chosen to become an alcoholic, right? There's just this
mhm,
idea that someone just decided to start drinking, keep drinking, keep drinking, keep drinking, and didn't want to ever stop. And she explained it as like an allergy to alcohol, where once I have a drink, I have to have another one and then another one. It's like I don't feel like I'm in control. And I think that's just such a great way to reframe it from I am making this choice versus this is something that's happening to me and I can do something about it, such as getting that support and then getting those interventions, hopefully getting some interventions for your mental health as well if there is an underlying cause, because that's super important to help prevent future relapses, but then making a safety plan and treatment plan for you, whether that is I've heard a little bit about moderation. I don't know much about it
mhm,
because my teachers did not go through it in class. They're like some places do that, but they teach us more about abstinence and staying away from it to maintain a better and longer form of sobriety. And I think for me, that was so important to learn about is that it's not like an allergy. It's not something you choose. You don't choose to be allergic to peanuts. But what happens
right.
when you have a peanut is out of your control. And what you can do is stay away and avoid peanuts and any peanut ingredient for as much as possible.
Hmm. Learn why you need to have that peanut and
Yeah.
the intentions of going to the peanut.
Yes,
Yeah.
and that goes like what you said with mental health, right? It's understanding, getting down into the brain chemistry and what's happening, what triggers it. Because if you don't know why, it's so hard to, if you don't have the tools you need, it's so hard to not relapse. It's so
Hmm.
easy to relapse in, I mean, I'll use self-harm for an example because that's what I can relate to. Without having the tools to reframe the thoughts in my brain, I am going to use the method that I naturally learned and taught myself and became kind of addicted to. So
Hmm.
without having those tools to recognize the thought patterns and reframe them, I wouldn't be able to stop and I would relapse. I think that's
Hmm.
so important to recognize is you need it's more than just I don't want to cut anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. It's what's causing me to do this and what can I do to help prevent it when those thoughts maybe do arise.
Hmm. It's like your system default. So
Yeah.
you go somewhere to like treatment or something and you hit reset, but your default is still to go there. So then in treatment, you have to learn, okay, we have to rewrite this whole hard drive so that that's no longer your default. Or if your brain wants to go there, to be self-aware enough to analyze, okay, the intentions and why you're going there. And then, um, you know, the physical will then follow behind because when I was in there, I mean, there lots of people are in there for way more things than just alcohol. It was, opioids and all types of stuff. And so they're literally physically addicted at this point. It's like their bodies are actually dying unless they get this drug. So there's that whole other step too. It's like you have to get through that and then get through the brain chemistry and all that stuff. And which is something we learned in treatment as well, which was very helpful was, okay, this is what your brain's doing when you're hungover, or this is what your brain's doing when you are wanting to drink, and this is what your brain's doing. So then when I do get in those moments, it's like, hey, this is what my brain's doing right now. This is just my brain doing stuff. Okay, I understand it physically. So that takes, it almost like decompartmentalizes everything and you can analyze it better. So then you can, process it and be more self-aware. But yeah, so once I got sober, um, and clean, I guess, my depression actually was almost non-existent anymore.
Wow.
My anxiety was still really high though. um, well, it was better. It was definitely better. It was more manageable because now, okay, I have anxiety, but now I'm not drunk or high or hungover or thinking about trying to get drunk or high. So it was a little more manageable. Um, but I was no longer spending days in bed and stuff like that. Then COVID hit. Well, actually, that's kind of when I started doing advocating and stuff. And the treatment center I was at actually asked me to come and speak once a month. And then eventually they asked me to work there. So I worked there for a couple of years, not as a counselor, but as a support staff. And then COVID hit and there's a bunch of stuff that happened. And yeah, my anxiety started going through the roof again. And I started bouncing around from job to job. And I thought I had broke that pattern because that still was very demoralizing to me that I couldn't keep a job. I couldn't start from the bottom and work my way up. It was like I was always starting at the bottom every 2 years because I was leaving jobs. Then one day, well, it was all around the same time. A bunch of stuff started happening, so I started seeing TikTok videos and Instagram videos about ADHD. We had a family gathering, and a bunch of my cousins and a bunch of relatives are talking about their ADHD, and I was like, "You guys have ADHD?" So I started looking into it more. So then it took me quite a while to actually get the assessment. It was almost a year trying to navigate the system to try and get the assessment, and then be on a waiting list and stuff. So that was kind of the lead up to the ADHD thing. And then once I finally got it, then it was like, oh my God, okay, thank God, this all makes sense now. Um, and then even this summer, I was having issues again, even though I got the diagnosis this summer, or no, yeah, about a year ago. I was still having issues with feeling. I can never remember this word. Such a good word. Doesn't matter. Um, eh, yeah, I was just really insecure with myself. Um, and then I started doing EMDR therapy, and I started working through old traumas that I don't think I could have dealt with unless I got sober and all these other steps first, because they were so buried under layers of stuff. That yeah, I just wouldn't have been. It would have driven me to drink more, I think, trying to deal with them then. Um, so anyway, my point is, we are always evolving. I'm always evolving. There's always something. I'm always trying to level up. And our brains are very complex things. Our emotions are complex things. The system is not great, so we have to try to come up with ways. We have to really advocate for ourselves, which is intensely difficult, especially if you're in the throes of depression and anxiety. Because like that should be the last thing you have to worry about is advocating for yourself when you're not well. But unfortunately, that's just the way it is. Um, so yeah, so that's kind of in a nutshell my my evolution of emotions and mental wellness slash illness. Sorry,
Your
squirrel. There, I got it.
your journey
My journey, yeah,
your
yeah.
journey really goes to show how complex mental health is and how much it evolves over time. And even when you take a big step forward, there may still be another mountain to climb, and that's okay. I think there's this idea that so many people have. I know that I had at the beginning was you kind of get through it once and that's it. And you come out the other side. It's like quick, easy. And
Yeah.
then it's like another mountain happened and then another one. And it was
Or
like
it's
I'm
not,
hiking.
and it's not a linear mountain either. It's like sometimes it's downhill, sometimes it's uphill. It's like, and then sometimes you go back, and then you have to come forward again. Yeah.
Exactly. It's like when you're going for a hike and you get to the top of the hill and you're so excited and you're like, well, now I go down and then I'm gonna have to climb back up. Oh, my camera just went off. And you have to climb back up, and it's really can feel disheartening. So knowing that it's not supposed to be linear, it's not supposed to be where you find that one magic pill, that one coping skill, that one thing that changes everything. It can make a huge difference. It can help you take a big step forward, but it's okay if that's not the finish line. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be I had this depressive episode. I did this one thing. Now I'm better and I'm never going to struggle again. As you grow, things grow. And like that's like peeling back an onion layer by layer. As you get through one, you may have something else come up, and that's okay. And the beauty of it is when the system does work for you, when you have the tools and support that you need, when you are able to advocate for yourself, when you have those resources, hopefully you're able to continue to peel down that onion and get the root of all of it and continue to grow.
Yes. And sometimes there's several roots.
Yeah. Sometimes there's a
And
lot of different onions.
yeah, that's right. I, I mean, even though I'm here today talking about this, I don't feel like I'm at a finish line at all. Like you could talk to me next year or 2 years from now, and I'll have another layer that I'm talking about of the main onion or side onion, side quest onion. I don't know, or or a different route, but yeah, it's ongoing, and um, I don't know if everybody is like this or if it's only certain people, but for whatever reason, it's me. So that's just the way it is, and it is constant maintenance. Like I said, whether it's um, diabetes or whatever, it's like this constant maintenance. You have to be very careful of your diet. You got to watch this. You got to do this, and there's the nice thing is that the more I'm around and the more I'm talking to people like you, and I got my own podcast and I'm talking to people, uh, the more I'm learning, and the more tools, the more supports, the more things there are that I can try. Because sometimes I did feel like I was spinning my wheels sometimes at a 12-step group outside of it, when I was coming out of treatment. It's like, well, that's fine. Maybe I've soaked up all I could out of a 12-step group, and I just got to try something else, and or try, and try more things at one time too. Like I don't have to just do this and just do this. I can have my toes in 3 or 4 different types of treatments and therapies and things. So, yeah, I don't. Now I'm just babbling.
No, but I love what you're saying because it's so important that we're honest as advocates, as people who are speaking up about it, who are working to hopefully make some changes to inspire people to make a difference, that we don't have to feel 100% all the time. I think there's this idea that if someone's advocating, they are perfect, their mental health is great, they're always in a great space. And that's not the reality. We're human beings, right? We struggle too. Our mental health is not always going to be great, even if we're talking about what's helping us and helping point people in the direction of resources. So it's so important to recognize that we're all in this together. And because you are still struggling and you see people talking about it in a more positive way, doesn't mean that they're not struggling too. So it gets better, but it doesn't get 100%, or maybe it does. For me, it has not gone 100%. I hope that it does. I would love to think that's possible. Don't
I'm
know. So no
cured.
one quote me on it.
Yeah.
Don't think that's possible. But maybe for one person out there, I don't know. Let's not quote me on this. But it's we're growing, we're changing, we're evolving, and you don't have to feel 100% to know that you have taken so many steps forward. And I hope anyone listening celebrates all the progress they have made. Todd, thank you so much for joining me as we are wrapping up. Can you share more about how people can connect with you, listen to your podcast?
Yes. I don't know if I told you this before. I can't remember, but I also have a children's book, Sometimes Daddy Cries, and it's available on Amazon and stuff. So, um, talking about young people and resources, that's one I came up with. It's about a kid watching his dad go through depression. So you can start them young. You can start teaching kids about emotions and mental health early. Um, And the podcast is called Bunny Hugs and Mental Health. It's available everywhere podcasts are. I just started the YouTube channel. So I don't know what I'm doing with YouTube yet, but they're there if you prefer to watch as opposed to listen. I feel like I'm forgetting something. Oh, I do a lot of speaking too, so I do it virtually too. So if people want a guest speaker ever or whatever, you can find me at bunnyhugspodcast@gmail.com.
Todd, you are amazing. Thank you so much for joining me today.
You're welcome. You're amazing too. You're a very nice, beautiful soul. And that's something I want people to know too. Just because I'm gorgeous, I also struggle.
Thank you so much for listening to Normalize the Conversation. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. This podcast is an initiative of Inspiring My Generation, focusing on normalizing the conversation, bringing education and awareness to the forefront, and amplifying global voices to spark change and hope. Inspiring My Generation is a 501c3 nonprofit organization on a mission towards suicide prevention through awareness, conversation, education, and support. Connect with us on Instagram at Inspiring My Generation and visit our website inspiringmygeneration.org to learn more about our work and how you can make a difference.